podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. Life isn't always easy. Oh, wait. Yes, it is. Because you use Amazon Prime. It has award-winning entertainment, like that movie you've been dying to watch. And not to mention super fast delivery on millions of items, all in the palm of your hand. Which means you can get that super comfy beanbag chair you've been eyeing to make movie night even better. Prime changes everything.
This episode is brought to you by DirecTV Stream. DirecTV Stream is your home for baseball. With the most regional sports networks of any streaming TV provider, DirecTV Stream gives you the most local baseball games. And that means more doubleheaders, triple plays, and no-hitters from your local team. Watch this season's action on DirecTV Stream. Get the best of live TV and on-demand at directtv.com/baseball. Regional sports networks are available with choice package or higher and may vary by zip code and package. Not available in all areas. Compatible device required.
The 1865 Match Report.
Hello and welcome, listener, to the 1865 Match Report on a day when Forest's winning streak came to an end. We came back down to earth with a 1-0 defeat away at Luton Town. Now, Forest made just one change to their starting lineup in this one, and Lewis Grabban, the skipper, returned in place of Philip Zinckernagel for a very attacking Forest lineup. I'm joined by Ryan McCole, Luton fan. Welcome back to the podcast, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we'll come to you in just a second, just to let you know, listener, that we'll also be hearing from our correspondent, Tom, who's fresh back from Kenilworth Road, and we'll be talking to him in a few minutes. But first, let's get the view from the Luton fan. Ryan, first of all, what were your expectations going into this one? Because I thought it's a 6-pointer. Were you feeling optimistic? Were you pessimistic? Were you somewhere in between?
I was probably somewhere in between, but hoped for a result because we picked up some good results against some top teams at home this season. So I was optimistic and hopeful.
Okay, so let's cut to the chase. We'll talk about a few bits of action in a minute, but a 1-0 victory, it was a bit flighty, a bit testy. Are you happy?
Ecstatic, as you can imagine, ecstatic. And very scrappy encounter, but we've been on the wrong side of a few of those this season, so delighted today.
Okie doke. And it's one of those. I think we can safely conclude that in terms of, for the neutral, in fact, one of our mates in one of our group chats did actually say, he's a Norwich fan, and he did actually say, well, it was a bit dull, but it was also intriguing. And I think that's summed up by the fact that neither goalkeeper had a huge amount to do, but there are a few key moments. So I think it's fair to say that Luton started the better. For the first 20 minutes or so, they were pressing really high and putting Forest under quite a lot of pressure. Is that normal for the way that you play?
Yeah, that is the best way for Luton to play, because if they don't, they seem to sort of fizzle out of games. So they do try and get on the front foot, especially with the home crowd as well. So that was quite typical and very pleasing today. Okay.
And that, that high line for Luton almost paid dividends after just 7 minutes, because Fred Onyedinma got through, Djed Spence miscontrolled it. That's a theme we'll come back to in a minute. And Brice Samba was forced into a save at his near post. It was a decent effort and a decent save. And then just a few minutes later, a fabulous run and through ball from Keenan Davis led to Lewis Grabban having a shot on target. And that brought what was probably, the save for the cameras from Jamie Shea down low to his right. But I bet with Grabban going through, I bet your heart was in your mouth for a second there, wasn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, I thought that should be 1-0. I think it was a good stop. But to be fair, I thought he should have buried it and should have given the keeper no chance. A let off.
Okay. Now, as we've got you, we need to talk about the officials. Okay. I'm just gonna lay it bare to you. Forest Twitter are going absolutely mental. Now, Forest Twitter is not necessarily a happy place to be when the result goes against the Reds. And on this occasion, the ire is not aimed at the team or any of the players. It is aimed purely and squarely at the referee, James Linnington. So would you agree with me that the referee got quite a lot of key decisions quite badly wrong?
would agree. He had an interesting 90 minutes or 9 minutes, as it were.
Okie doke. So let's go through some of those moments. Okay, 35 minutes. James Bree goes down the right hand side. The ball pops up from his foot. It hits Jack Colback on the hand. It's one of those weird things. What's a natural position? What's an unnatural position? Like, there's no time to debate the laws here because, well, there's no point because we're not going to get to a decent conclusion. After it hits Colback on the hand, then James Bree spanks it with his hand as well. So it's a bit of a comedy moment, and it's given as a penalty. Now, in our group chat, you were saying it's a bit soft. Do you feel the same now?
I think we've got away with another one there, to be fair, because on the first look, it looked soft, and I saw someone else had posted a sort of close-up follow-up action where it looked definitely as though it shouldn't have been a pen, but it was given, and the main thing is we converted it, which has not been a theme of late, so it definitely wasn't a given. Even once it was given, it wasn't a granted that we'd score, but we did, thankfully.
I did ask you after the match at the City Ground back in November, and also after what happened earlier this week. I did ask you before the match, if you get a penalty, will Adebayo be taking it? And the answer was a resounding no. I have to say that Cal Naismith, he was never going to miss. That was from the moment he stepped up, it looked as if he was going to score, as far as I was concerned.
Although apparently he missed his last two, for one for Accrington and one for Pompey. So I didn't know that stat beforehand, but he did dispatch it quite nicely.
Oh, that's a sign he's not taken a penalty for a while, though. But okay, and just a quick word about Naismith. He got the Sky Sports Man of the Match, and I thought he was terrific. I do think that he's been a great signing for you. And although he played a lot of football as a midfielder at Wigan, he's mostly played at centre-half for you. So were you confident with him filling the gap in your injury-ravaged midfield?
Yeah, I think it was a good move. There wasn't too many options, as you say, with the injuries, but he is so versatile that it hasn't always benefited his career. Actually, he would say, and people would say, but he's been an absolute star for us. The so-called Caldini, as the Luton fans love to christen him.
Okay, well, I won't be calling him that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then go back to the action, and the next contentious decision I've got in my list. There's a few others we could choose from. There's a lot of yellow cards, but early in the second half, Ryan Yates plays a through ball. Djed Spence breaks the line. It is he puts the ball across Jamie Shea into the far corner. At first glance, I thought, well, he's onside because he seemed to be coming from behind Onyedinma. On the first replay, you think, okay, actually well called linesman. And then you look more closely, and Sky Sports have pointed this out. And Glenn Murray, ex-Forest striker, who was being the pundit, quite rightly pointed out, Forest have been robbed on this one, haven't they? Because Onyedinma played the ball, and that was the final touch when it went through to Spence.
Yeah, again, we've been really lucky there. I think it was a goal. It should have stood. But Onyedinma's had such a great game. Probably his best game in a Luton shirt, so I'll let him have that. It's a bit of luck today.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought it was quite interesting as well, the fact that you were playing Bell at left back, and Onyedinma was basically playing left wing, presumably to double up on Spence and Johnson, and Brennan Johnson was very quiet. I'm just going to skip ahead because after Philip Zinckernagel came on, just a minute after he came on, he had a header from a Brennan Johnson cross. It was a save at the near post by Shea. Again, what were you expecting the worst there?
Yeah, I really like the player actually. So when he came on, it was a bit ominous, but I felt probably could have done better. And then a few moments later, even still. So I'm sure you'll come on to that opportunity.
Well, what I'm going to come on to is to mention that Zinckernagel, he did hit the post later on. And again, I shall be talking a bit more detail about this with Tom from a Forest perspective. But in terms of what we're going to talk about, Ryan, we're going to go on to the next big contentious moment with the ref. So, Sonny Bradley, your captain, was on a yellow card. The ball gets played through, and Bradley brings down Sam Surridge. And on the face of it, absolutely no qualms about it being a second yellow. But there's more to it than that, wasn't there?
Yeah, he did come back from an offside position, I felt, so it was a bit unfortunate.
Yeah. Has there been any kind of word from the Luton camp, from Nathan Jones or anything about what they think about that? Because I would imagine that they're probably not very happy about that red card, and especially as you can't appeal a red card for 2 yellows, can you?
No, it was disappointing, and he's only just back from injury as well, so it was a bit careless. But as some fans sort of said afterwards, we've got Cardiff on Monday, and it would have been his 3rd game in a week, so he probably would have been rested anyway.
That's a very optimistic approach to go for. Once again, though, can we agree that the officials had an absolute nightmare? Not just the referee, but the linesman on that side had an absolute nightmare, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a bit of a shocker. To be fair. Really, really odd one.
Okay. There was obviously more going on in terms of there's a little bit of handbags between Keenan Davis and Alan Campbell and Reece Burke, which brought some yellow cards earlier on. But then towards the end of the match, after Zinckernagel had hit the post, Johnson had an effort that was saved by James Shea, and Keenan Davis had to go off because he was feeling his hamstring. And I think 10v10. The great thing about Forest this season is they keep going right till the last minute. If we'd had 11 men against 10 of yours, then who knows what would have happened. It's always very difficult to say. But you had 7 yellow cards, 8 if you include the one that led to Bradley's red. A lot of Forest fans saying, Luton, you're a bunch of dirty houses. What do you make of that?
I didn't actually think the game was that dirty, to be honest. I thought some of the yellows were soft. I thought there were some handbags, and it's not necessarily typically Luton's way. I think they've been a bit rough today, and probably in the game back in November at the City Ground, it was a bit scrappy as well. But hasn't generally been the way for Luton this season. I wouldn't say they were a dirty team, but I think they just mucked in today, and that probably showed in the yellow card count.
Okay. Other opinions are available, Reds fans. Now, Ryan, I'm going to come back to the penalty because way back in November, we saw Jack Colback get a second yellow card. He was the man who got sent off in that match. And there was a penalty which Elijah Adebayo had missed. And that one, at the time, I remember we were discussing, I was saying, I have no objection to the referee giving a penalty for that kind of foul in the box, as long as referees up and down the country give those kinds of penalties. And I have the same feeling about today, because just about half an hour after today's match ended, I watched Adam Smith of Bournemouth handball in exactly the same way as Jack Colback did. The referee wasn't even interested. So in that respect, there's a real problem with refereeing at championship level, isn't there?
Yeah, it just seems so odd that it is so inconsistent and so poor. When you think about it, it's only one league down from the Premiership, the best league in the world. So whether I have any expectation that could improve anytime soon, probably not. Okay.
And just finally from you today, Ryan, obviously you've beaten us in a 6-pointer. You're now above us in the table. And what are your expectations for the rest of the season? Are you confident about getting the playoffs? Are you hoping for promotion, or is that just a dream?
I think the classic footballing cliche, take every game as it comes. Whatever happens, we've had an unbelievable season and we are delighted where we are, absolutely punching above our weight. And so we can dream and continue to dream. And fingers crossed we may see you at Wembley. You never know. That's if you haven't given up your dream of automatics, which I think is probably still in quite a few hearts and minds.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ryan. We shall be discussing that with Tom in just a moment.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
This year's NBA playoffs are going to feature a lot of great rookies, and FanDuel wants you to be one of them. Make your debut on FanDuel Sportsbook with promo code ROOKIE, and your first bet is risk-free up to $1,000. So you can bet the point spread, grab the money line, or build a same-game parlay. And if you make a rookie mistake, FanDuel will give you up to $1,000 back in site credit, so you can take another shot. Okay, this guy's got potential. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Sign up and unlock your risk-free first bet up to $1,000. We're looking forward to seeing what you're made of.
21 plus in President, Virginia. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Okay, now I'm joined by Tom Newton. You're fresh back from the away end down at Kenilworth Road. Tom, just to start off with, how do you feel about that? Because I was discussing with Ryan about how Forest Twitter is frothing at the mouth. We've talked about the officials and we're going to talk about them again soon enough. So as an away fan, how do you feel?
I still feel angry with the levels of officiating from the game, but on reflection, looking back of this afternoon's results, it could have been worse. It could have been better if we would have got a draw, if not the win. So yeah, I'm still angry with how the officiating went, but on reflection, the results have turned out okay for us.
Okay, I'm just going to refer to what Steve Cooper said on his in his post-match interview with Radio Nottingham, which you may not have heard yet, I suppose. So he wasn't happy with the ref and made the point that if the penalty was happening at the other end, I think I know what decision would have been given. He also said that he wasn't happy with the decision about the Djed Spence goal that was ruled out. And quite interestingly, he also expressed his surprise at the appointment of referee James Linnington. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, at this level, you'd expect there to be a different appointment. So it was a 6-pointer at the top end of the championship, and it sounds like he didn't think the ref was up to it. What do you think?
Well, we knew Luton was going to, how their ground is and the tightness of the pitch, because obviously the pitch is smaller. We know it was going to get closed down, not going to have the freedom, but we knew it was going to be a battle. But when you're up against an extra 3 men in terms of the two officials and the referee, it's just like, it's one of those games. It's just like the levels of consistency when it comes to officiating in this league, it just seems getting worse and worse. And because of the magnitude of the game, that linesman wasn't up to it today. No way he 100% give that penalty, because we was quite close, looking straight on at it, and we wasn't convinced when it happened who is it hit. Then he's pointed to the spot. I'm like thinking, how can you call that? But regarding to what you said regarding the question, what was the significance of James Linnington? Have we had previous with him, or?
I don't know, is my honest answer. I just think that maybe Cooper was saying that we've got a ref who would be happier at a lower level, and whether he gets in trouble for that, I'm not sure, but we'll find out, I suppose. Yeah,
he's been close to the knuckle in recent weeks, hasn't he? And he says enough, but without saying too much. Mm-hmm. He kind of stayed on the right side of the law, but with him saying that, probably the FA, you never know, might say, well, you've had a couple of close to the knuckle opinions now, and we're going to do you for this one. So it's one of them.
The other thing that Cooper said was that about whether the referee is suitable to ref at this level. He said he'll basically get what he deserves, in the sense of that once the manager's reports and everything go in. So maybe he has got beef with this particular official. I don't know, but I mean, for me, the referee is one thing in terms of the cards he was handing out, the decisions he was making, because ultimately he's in charge. You talked about the penalty, and we talked about it with Ryan, and Ryan was saying, that Luton were kind of handed that one on a plate. The thing that I was saying was that just like with the penalty that Luton got at the City Ground, that's fine in itself, but you look at other matches up and down the country, and what you won't have seen, Tom, because you'll have been on your way back up the M1, is just about 45 minutes later, in the Bournemouth match, there was a similar instance where Isaiah Jones put the ball in and Adam Smith was about 2 yards away. It hit him on the arm, outstretched arm. Referee there wasn't interested. So you can't rely on the decisions that officials are giving, can you?
No, and it's not with us, it's with other teams as well, that these decisions and non-decisions, what are being given or not given, keep rearing its ugly head week in, week out. And there's enough money knocking about in the Championship from in terms of TV money and advertising. So I just think the next logical step is having VAR, because there's a lot of teams in this league who are like vying for Premier League status, and that could set your club up for the next few years or whatever. And with these games, what we've had earlier today against Luton, the magnitude of them and the pitfalls if you don't get decisions which are good for you. It's just every single week now something's happening, and they say over a season they level themselves out, but if you look at what we've had against us and what we've been given, I think it's chalk and cheese basically, because we could have had a stonewall penalty against QPR, didn't happen. There's other games as well, and then we've been done again today with that iffy penalty decision, which, like I said, the linesman cannot give that, because surely he cannot be 100% clear in his mind that it is definitely a penalty when it isn't.
Okay, well, I personally think that even with VAR, that penalty would be given, because they wouldn't say it was a clear and obvious error. It did hit Colback on the hand, and so they would just say it hit him on the hand, and therefore we're going to go with the ref's decision. But the decision in the second half for Spence's goal, which was ruled out, and then possibly the red card for Sonny Bradley, I think those two, under VAR, would have had very different outcomes, I think.
Yeah, the first decision regarding Djed Spence, it's like, this is the thing with referees, they've never played the game at a decent level. They don't know how the ball bounces, and it was obvious that it come off the Luton player. So therefore, it's come off him. He's made a genuine attempt to play the ball, etc. Djed Spence gone in, put it away. No, it's just things like that. Then the Sonny Bradley sending off, it's like it's a straight red card, and with the games coming up, he's only going to miss one game because it was a second booking.
Well, but actually, that's interesting, because that's what you saw in real time. What we realised, having seen the replays, is that it shouldn't have been given at all, because Sam Surridge was clearly offside, and therefore that's not the ball. The ball was dead, and therefore it's not a yellow or a red card offence. Yeah,
and then it goes back to with the Djed Spence one. So it's. For those two decisions, it swings and roundabouts, but it's just frustrating when we should be concentrating on the game, etc., and it's overshadowed by poor officiating.
Okay, well, on that topic, Adam, who regular listeners will have heard on our podcast, Adam was absolutely furious straight after the match, and he's saying, if Luton are playing to their strengths, I suppose their strengths are throwing themselves to the floor and barely having the ball in play. It was a disgusting performance by them, as well as disgusting by the officials. You've made this point yourself, so Tom, when you're at the ground, you must have noticed that I'm not going to say it's just time wasting, but it's Luton stretching it and the refs not clamping down on it in terms of timekeeping, perhaps.
Yeah, we knew with the sending off there was going to be quite a few minutes of added time, but somebody who was watching the game at home was texting us, and in the 8 minutes of stoppage time, only 4 minutes worth of football was being played, because they kept going down with cramp and just generally time wasting. And we all know Bruce Samber's been done for time wasting in the past, but it took a long time for the referee to actually clamp down on it, and it's just frustrating. It is. I mean, yeah, we all know that Samba does it, but I don't know if it's having a biased stance on things, but it just seems like other teams are allowed to do it, because it's no disrespect to him, but it's like Luton who are punching above the weight and everything. And going back to the inconsistencies, there was, in the same period of play, Djed Spence gets done for holding back a Luton player when he's in the attacking third. The ball breaks and goes to the other end. It's like basically the same foul, but he gives it to Luton. And it's just things like that where the inconsistencies just infuriate you as watching the game as a paying fan.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter which team you support. You want the same decision to be made twice, don't you?
Yeah. But again, goes to that game should have been like two teams in the top six. We should be talking about the football, and we were relatively poor in the first half and just didn't get going, and there was no fluidity with the play and everything. We should be looking at should have been a decent game of football, but again, the referees have overshadowed what should have been a really decent football match.
Okay, so let's talk about football. As we've spent a good few minutes talking about other things, and let's talk about the football. It's worth pointing out, in amongst everything else, that Forest did have the chances to get back into the game. So obviously, there was that really good save by Jamie Shea in the first half from Lewis Grabban when Forest could have took the lead. But in the second half, Baz and I were talking about how Philip Zinckernagel won't have slept very well after the Liverpool match, and then again recently he's not always done as well as he could. Today he had that diving header and he had the effort that hit the post. He should have been scoring at least one of those, shouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, the one that hit the post is just unlucky. But when the ball come over for the header, I thought he had a bit of time just to chest it and then side foot it past the keeper, or at least get it on target. And he's snatched at the chance there, and it's relatively an easy save for the Luton goalkeeper. And we had after the Zinckernagel hit the post and the ball come out to Johnson, he could have squared it inside to Djed Spence, but he took the scenic route and tried to get which he got closed down, and I think their keeper saved it, kind of thing. But Djed Spence was in a better position. But it's just one of those games where we've been really decent in recent weeks, and it's just one of those games where we just didn't look like we was going to score today. So, but no, we'll dust ourselves off, and the good thing about it, it's like the players get back to Nottingham, recover, refuel, and then go again on Monday for an equally bigger game in my eyes, because it's at home, etc.
Okay, so Steve Cooper did make the point again in his post-match interview, and they asked Lewis Grabban as well as the player who was being interviewed, saying that the players can feel disappointed today at not getting the win. You should always feel disappointed when you don't get the win. But the performance levels, especially in the second half, were much better. I think we did get outplayed for the first half of the first half, if you sort of mean the first 20 minutes or so. But yeah, Forest took the game to Luton. Luton used spoiler tactics. Now, when we weren't recording, Ryan did say to me that he was surprised at how kind of tight Luton played, and he reckoned that was probably down to their injuries and the fact that they knew that Forest were really good, so they did play kind of more of a spoiler match. And also, Ryan also reckons that if Luton had tried to play more expansive, they didn't do that because they knew that Forest would be better at it. So that's quite an interesting perspective there. But going back to Steve Cooper and Lewis Grabban, they both said, yep, disappointed today, but tomorrow we come into training. And Cooper said, if there's anyone who's disappointed or not up for it tomorrow, then that's when I know I've got a problem. So it is about dust yourself down, get on with it. Today was a 6-pointer, wasn't it, Tom? So how much does it damage our chances of achieving success for the rest of the season?
I think, looking back where we are now, I think we're in a fantastic position considering what we've mentioned on the pod before of those awful 6 or 7 games at the start of the season, which saw Chris Hughton lose his job. So to be in this position is absolutely fantastic, because when Steve Cooper come in, his first job was get us away from the relegation zone, and just mid-table would have been a success, but we've bypassed that, and there's been talk about automatic promotion, which, to be honest, it's still on when you look at the results. What's happened today with Bournemouth only getting a 0-0 against, I forgot who they played now. Middlesbrough. So, yeah, it's not all lost second place. I mean, we've still got to play Bournemouth, and they've been faltering in recent weeks. So if we get ahead on the game for the game against West Brom on Monday, and they say they don't win again, it closes the gap even more and just puts immense pressure on them, because they've been in that top 2 position for the majority of the season, and they wouldn't want to be coming into the playoffs, because when teams do that, it's very hard for them to get going. So if the chasing pack are like hunting them down, they're going to think, well, here comes potentially Huddersfield, and I think they're winning 1-0 at the moment against QPR. And obviously with us, because obviously we've got a game in hand on other teams in the top 6. I know we're level on games with Bournemouth, but we've still got Bournemouth to play, and we've still got Fulham to play, and potentially there's a chink in their armour in terms of the loss against Coventry the other day. Yeah, so they might be on the beach by the time we play them, and then obviously the pressure's on Bournemouth, and we could go into that game thinking pressure's relatively off us because we're not really expecting to get into the automatics. But first and foremost, we've got to cement our place in the playoffs. Like, just look after our own business.
Yeah, absolutely. So a win against West Brom on Monday. You never know what you're going to get one week to another with West Brom. So a win against them would be very welcome. Obviously, we're awaiting news of Keenan Davis and Scott McKenna, who both were feeling their hamstrings. So fingers crossed that we get good news there. As Tom mentioned, we're recording this while Huddersfield are still playing. So according to the live table, Forest are 5th on 67 points. Bournemouth are in 2nd on 74 points. And then sandwiched between those two teams are Huddersfield, who are currently 3rd, and Luton, who are in 4th, having beaten us in the 6 points today. But obviously Forest have got 2 games on Huddersfield and Luton. So it's important that they do dust themselves down and regain the momentum. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Tom Newton for today, and also thank you to Ryan McCole for providing the view from the opposition. We'll be back on Monday night after the West Brom match. Let's hope we can dust ourselves down and get going again. Come on, you Reds.
Sports Social Podcast Network.